And I think the way Google looks at that too is like, hey, we're going to help this client increase their spend. That's the way they look at it, and increase the client's revenue. And we're going to take some profit margin by having them advertise broad match. So they're making a recommendation which is theoretically, academically positive, which is, hey, we're going to do branded search advertising in a broad phrase and exact, which is going to get you tons of exposure, which is not what the company, what the client wants. They want revenue. But Google's coming in there, hey, we're going to give you these other tips and tricks that are going to give you that return on ad spend. Meanwhile, we're going to take some profit margin out of your ad spend by helping you waste money in broad match for your brand, and that's going to be the trade-off. So it's kind of like how I would look at it as the way Google fundamentally, or this team specifically, looks at things and then says, hey, we're going to give you something, and in return you're going to do some bullshit advertising, and we're going to make some profit so that we can hit our quarterly numbers, yada yada. And then the fact that this guy is jumping into the middle of the situation, you've spent years at this point trying to build a relationship with the client. Not trying to build, you have built years of relationship with the client. You've made them money. You helped their business grow, would you say 30% already this year? And then you've gone even further with helping them not waste money, which is leading to positive success. And then you're already into the seasonal plan because their season's already started. The sun's out, etc. in this example. And then Google's trying to jump hands and feet head first into your relationship and basically fuck it all up. But this guy, this employee, fucking everything up makes Google more money, more profits, and more margin. So you've got a mercenary hired by Google to get in the middle of a thing that's working great for Google and the client and basically fuck it up for Google's advantage. And your job is to just prevent that from happening. Play nice with the guy, be nice with him, take as much information as you can, see what can work, what doesn't, and keep that Google employee from completely fucking everything up. That's your goal. And then basically you just got to do it covertly. Take the guy's advice, maybe set up a phrase matching campaign with a really, really tight budget. That way, the money doesn't get lost, something like that. I mean, that's the way I would look at it. But this is common. This is like the MO on Google employees part of things. So you just kind of got to roll with it. I don't know. So that's that. I mean, that's a quick.
Part of me wants to just say, Kyle, get out of here. We don't need you. But then it's like, then you lose access to some of the things, like, maybe some beta programs that the general public doesn't have access to that would be great. Or like, maybe even if there are some really like severe back-end technical issues, like that, for example, if we, if hits a back-end issue that, like, say their account gets paused or something stupid, like, you don't want to deal with like the regular Google support. Like, you can rush that up the chain, right? So for me, it really is, I'm trying to consider, like, what's the balance here? How can I balance this out? And the other thing is, like you said, how can we keep them in just enough not to piss them off and to make them want it? Because I've definitely done this where I met with these reps on behalf of the client, and I kept them, all of their recommendations were just so poor. Yeah. And I kept them at bay, and then I just never heard from them again, and I basically lost access, right? And hopefully it's not, I don't think they would do anything like to sabotage or anything purposeful, like, like, oh, wow, you're not going to let us have any hand in this? Okay, we're going to do this on the back end and make sure that your ads.
Yeah, I would. The way I would sell this to make sure that they don't mess anything up is, like, especially this guy's coming in late and everything. He's coming in late and he's coming in hot and heavy. So Google itself, that's the thing, man. The developers at Google are the ones that are doing all the work, building the infrastructure and everything else, and then they're adding on these other people to help and do sales in attempts to increase the profits, the revenue, the margins, etc. But and it's still a debate out there to some extent whether adding these non-developers of the Google Ads and search system and algorithm people, adding these other people like this Kyle guy onto the process is actually additive or reductive. And this is a good example where we would argue as outsiders from Google that it's reductive, because this Kyle guy, the developers and the builders of Google, the infrastructure, the software, the algorithm, Google Ads, they've built something, and then management has added in this Kyle guy to try and make the process additive with the clients. And in this example, I would just basically tell the guy, hey man, you're late to the show. Where were you 2 years ago, a year ago? And then, even this season, man, like we're at the season, the start of the season. The sun's out, the guns are out, and you're just now showing up to the project to see what you can contribute and or completely change the direction and the plan that's already producing, what you say, 30% year over year just in the first, February. So it's like you can be point blank with the guy, like, hey man, you're late. Your plan is late. We're already into the season. We're already creating 30% year over gains. So look, we will all, the client and I will graciously accept anything that we think will contribute to the current plan that's already underway. And everything else, things like broad match that may or may not work, we might be okay, or we might set up a testing budget for a campaign like that. But our stuff's already hitting. Our numbers are already going. So if you're not adding to the percentage year over year gains, then we're going to have to sandbox your ideas into a testing campaign, and until we see them produce numbers that are at or greater than what I've built for the client, we're not going to put it into the main budgets.
Yeah.
And just leave it at that. And because that's what any adult professional would do. Like what this Kyle guy from Google Accelerated Growth Team is jumping in hands and feet, already late, already missed the season, already missed the planning, doesn't know any history, doesn't know any background. He's already mucking things up. He's confusing the client, number one, and no adult professional would come into a business relationship like that. That's just, it's not adult and it's not professional.
Yeah. Well, and I have a couple other thoughts. I mean, in that regard, like, the whole thing is just so muddied.
Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I want to tell my client, like when he's asking here, what did he say? He said, when you have a moment, please reply to this email. That's the one with that PDF where he sent, a growth plan, the strategic overview, the account plan summary. It says, what we need from you at the very bottom, it says agreement to account plan. After you've had a chance to review, please reply to this email thread confirming that you'd like to partner together. I feel like I should advise my client, do not do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I would go take them back to the drawing board. If they're going to try this bureaucracy and pull this stuff this late in the game, then you got to drag them through their own bureaucracy, because they're trying to jump in here and muck everything up. So now you and the client, you can't do it without your client's approval. You guys have to take this guy through the ringer, because he hasn't been here for the last 5 years, 2 years with the incredible growth that you've helped your client with. So at this point in time, you say, no, we've reviewed, after you professionally review his recommendations or plan or whatever, and then write it back, either pick out the good things or the things that you and the client are open to trying, table everything else and say, look, we appreciate, we see the insights that you've brought to the table. You can be nice and polite and honest as far as the good things, and then communicate about the bad things and just assert your position as advocate for your client's performance, ad campaign performance, and just say, hey, we've tried these things, these don't work. Thank you for the recommendation, but we've already ticked them off the list and tried them the last year, 2 years, and we're not going to do that, but we will do this, or we will try this with a limited budget, and then let it roll from there. So I would just go back to asserting what the plan is now and what you and the client are comfortable with, and that's fine.
So here's my ultimate question for you. And again, I mean, I respect your opinion, and this is why I'm bringing this to you. You've been in this world a long time, even longer than me. Even as far as I've come, and as much as I've done, and as many accounts that I've run and growth that I've brought to different companies. I mean, you've still been in this basically since its inception, and you've watched this bureaucracy develop and play out, all the bureaucratic nonsense, tied to this monopoly, Google.
Yeah.
So I do trust your opinion, and I'm allowing you to weigh in heavily. But so this is what I'm seeing from you is kind of the 1,000-foot view of how this should be handled.
Yeah.
Correct me where I'm wrong, but basically, maybe I just advise my client, because see, he tried to get Ben to go ahead and reply back to this, and I stepped in and said, we're going to wait on that. I said, Ben, hold off. Let's not do anything yet. I need to review more of this. Kyle, I said, let's meet in a couple weeks and we'll talk this stuff over again and then maybe proceed from there. And then Kyle, of course, said, well, until he approves this, I can't really send it up. Like he said, there's certain insights in the account that aren't available to. There's certain access that our team can't get to the account. There's certain things.
Sales language, probably.
Yeah. If you at least approve this or agree to this now, then we can at least get started. And he said, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to make changes to the account and stuff like that. But I still something in me just said, I said, Kyle, I understand and I appreciate that, but we're going to hold off for a couple more weeks. I'm going to review this. We'll meet back in a couple. So they haven't agreed to anything. And so I guess to kind of get back to that 1,000-foot view of what I think I'm hearing you say is, I wonder if we should just not allow, and I don't know what this access is that he's talking about. It's
just sales material. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you the secret. I'm going to give you the secret at Google, but you got to sign this document. You got to agree to wasting 30% of your client's budget, and then I'm going to give you the secret. Not anybody else. Not all these normal people that funnel their money and their hard-earned advertising dollars into Google Ads, but you. As soon as you sign off on this plan, it's just sales language BS, and it's just general sales. I'm going to add urgency to this so that we can get this and go on. That's all that is, most likely.
Well, I think I can see how there might be some validity to, they're trying to expedite and start going through all the groundwork.
Yeah.
Because again, they sent this other email that's like, what are your monthly revenue goals? What percentage of revenue sales does Google Ads make up? What percentage of ad spend does Google Ads make up? What are your other highest spending?
Yeah, because they want to eat into that profit. That's what I'm saying, man. And that's the thing. That's where it's like a Mexican standoff, man. They're asking for inside information. They're asking for insider information on a privately held business about their margin, their revenue, their profits, return on ad spend, and everything else. So, you got to be careful with that. And I would never give them, I don't know. It depends on things, but whether you get how accurate, or understated how good those margins are that you communicate to Google, might be a legitimate strategy to protect the business. Because that's the other thing, like Accelerated Growth Team, man, they get all the business owners of the country, of the world, are out there running a marathon, and then Google gets to wait at the end of the marathon and work with the winners. and or along the way, if they see who's winning and what their margins are and what vertical and what industry they're in, they're going to offer to work with them. And then if they don't work with them, they'll go find the competitor and then just offer them the same thing. Because that's the other
Yeah.
thing. They can pick the winners. They're in a position to be able to pick the winners. And that's what a lot of people have issues with as far as Google and who the playing favorites and everything else. So, there is a little bit of risk there, but I mean, that's reality.
There is a little what? I'm sorry, you cut out.
Yeah, there's a little risk there as far as, sharing information, confidential private information, and then, is Google going to take that, and then if you don't work with them or whatever, and that's kind of the implied threat undercover all this. That's why they're doing the sales tactics, but then there's the veiled threat is like, well, if you don't work with us, then we'll go work with your competitor, somebody else that's manufacturing the same product or selling the same product. And go help them instead of you. That's the veiled threat also with the sales pitch that they're doing.
Well, so okay, so then so to continue the 1,000 foot view of what should be done, maybe I feel like maybe I just advise my client, don't mess with these guys. Turn them entirely back over to me. This is what I was doing anyway for the last several years. I was dealing with the Google growth
Yep.
team, just me. Now I would have I had meetings with them, maybe like quarterly. Yes, I tossed a lot of their recommendations to the side and did my own thing. I took some of their recommendations and I told them, I showed appreciation for some of the
Yeah.
those few moments of where I felt like that they were making a good
Providing value. Yep.
right. So, um, so, so, so maybe the answer here is I just tell stop communications, tell them you're turning me over to all this, you're turning them back over to me entirely, and they're not even going to deal with them anymore. And then maybe I just do the dance with them and try to make them happy enough to keep them on board, but not. I mean, obviously, if we don't go through this whole process, see, here's the other thing. Like, I've been on forums, I've read like Reddit threads and stuff like that. Like, if Kyle comes in and can get them to spend another $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
he gets a cut from that. He gets a percentage of that.
I would imagine there's some kind of override or something. Yeah.
There is a cut. Undoubtedly, there's a cut. They did I tell you about the well, first of all, to that point, I've read on a thread already where Google growth strategists chimed in and talked about being very plain and blunt. Yeah, we do get a cut. Take some of the recommendations with a grain of salt. There is incentive to to spend more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, obviously they do want it to do well because they want to be able to come in next year and then double that budget again. So obviously they want it to do well, but the problem is, and the disconnect is that at the end of the day, they are still pro Google. They are Google first. They're not first.
True.
Where me, I'm totally first. I don't care how much or how little money we spend on Google. If we to achieve the end result, I'll do whatever it takes. Doesn't matter to me how much they give Google.
Yeah.
Well, with Kyle, it does matter how much you give Google. So that's kind of where the disconnect is.
Yeah, and I mean that's that's the muddying of the waters. But Google created that, and then they not only did they created the platform or the developers and all those guys, but then that's where management comes in and then muddies the waters by hiring this Kyle guy and then giving him incentives based structures that allow him to not only jump in the middle of something and potentially derail it, but also adding the sense of urgency, the sales stuff, the hey, we need a sign off before we'll give you the goods, and then also the veiled threat. So all those things are true, and the clients. Yeah, the clients already know they can't trust Google because they've had enough interactions with them over the last decade, 2 decades. So I mean, the educated enough clients know that only people like us, as far as that are hired and paid directly from the client, have their best interests at heart because they know they're not going to get it with Google. Yeah.
It is so clutch that Ben did this whole. He answered his emails. He went through that meeting with him. And then when he sent that PDF over, it's just so clutch that Ben reached out to me and said, "Hey, should I do this?"
Yeah.
Like right at that moment.
Yeah, and that's where all the time comes from us, us, people that do what we do, building relationships with the client because the client is busy running the business and working on that business to make it profitable, increase revenue, figure out all the logistics of manufacturing or supply chains or employment, and then here comes this Google employee completely mucking everything up, taking the time and attention from the business owner, from the business to something that the business owner's already outsourced and paid you directly to do and work with Google. And then now here's this Google employee coming in the middle, taking time, vital time of the owner away from the business to focus on something, a problem he's already solved and successfully done by working with you, and then now he's trying to foul it all up. So I mean, I would drive that home with the client as far as, like Ben in this example. It's like, hey man, this is just the fact that you client have already solved this problem by working with me, and then Google's gotten in the middle of it and put this responsibility back on you. The clients don't have time to educate themselves on Google ads, the algorithms, all the different campaign strategies, bid type, match types, everything else. And then now here's a Google employee trying to strong arm the client into an area outside of his expertise. I mean, that's as fishy as it gets.
Yeah, yeah. A big part of me wants to just. I think that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I feel like that's the answer. I feel like I'm just going to get the client to turn this entirely back over to me, and I'll tell Kyle, hey, look, we've, like you said, I mean, we're already into it. We're already doing this. We're already moving forward. If you would like to make recommendations to add along the way, that's fine. I did tell him, I said, if you want to work with the client on the feed, I said, I really don't do much with, stuff pertaining to the feed. I told that when they brought me on, that I'm not a feed guy. I don't go in Google Merchant Center and do anything there on the back end. Like everything, once all that stuff is in place and ready, I go into the Google Ads platform and make everything happen from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're going to have a developer for the feed stuff generally because, I mean, we can, we work with the developers as far as giving them guidance to meet the guidelines or the best practices, meaning what fields, what data in what fields, and or feed layout, etc. But I mean, the developers have to do all that. But I mean, we as ad reps, or consultants, we have to kind of liaise between what is it that Google wants, and then what does the client's website have to generate, and then we translate the Google needs to the developer so the developer can get us and Google feeds what they need so that we can be successful. Yeah.
You do feed work, right?
Well, I mean, the liaison part, as far as what Google needs, and then communicating with the developer so the developer can generate the feed properly. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's still got to be a developer involved in the majority of cases. I mean, simple things, like simple feeds, sometimes Google Merchant feeds, depending on the website platform, if it'll just allow you to kind of click setup the way it needs to export. But if not, in the majority of what we see at the scale we see, it's a developer's got to be involved.
So one thing he said is for Merchant Center in this PDF, account plan summary, to share a resource on MC feed best practices plus connect Ben with our shopping team to improve / categorize the feed. But
that could be taxonomy issues. So maybe if there's not Google taxonomy issues already implemented, maybe you got to do that. Maybe that's what he's referencing. I don't know exactly, but I mean, that would be like my speculation briefly.
But like anything that would need to be done with that feed to make it successful, maybe even work on like the titles of some products and stuff like that to make it appear or get higher in the ad auction or whatever. Or
I mean, that could just be boilerplate communication from the growth team as far as this is a line item on our, because they use that same PDF, plan, and then they just copy paste, augment, blah blah blah. So it may be just a boilerplate and maybe that's already done. Maybe it's just a checklist. Like, hey, this is our plan of attack. Okay, we verified everything's set up properly, so we're not doing anything with that. I mean, that could be the situation too. You never know.
The only thing I like, but you could do that for them.
Yeah, the feed
Like
stuff. Yeah,
you could do stuff. Now, obviously, you would charge, but you could do it.
it's
And
usually,
I
yeah. I mean, as long as the developer's involved and we tell the developer how we need it, it's usually not that time intensive. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, now when you get into situations where, like, if there's a not, and that's not the case with this particular client, but like, some clients have crazy amount of products or kind of similar products that apply to different taxonomies, and then you get into like somebody at the business has to set the taxonomy for each one of those products, and then the developer can generate the feed. So, I mean, those are time-consuming situations, but otherwise, I mean, it should be pretty quick and easy.
The only reason I even paused on this part, and I thought, okay, well, this is something, because there's two things that they talked about here that I think are good, and that's one of them.
Hmm.
Because that's not something I do. I don't really work on feeds. I don't really, but I do know, at least from my understanding, Noah, like, how you title products, even on your pages,
Hmm.
your product
Yeah,
pages and stuff
best
like
practice
that.
stuff. Yeah.
That's how you can get more success out of your Google Ads campaigns. If
Hmm.
they're titled, and you use certain words in the descriptions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you do, I might even, when I talk to them about, I might even say, look, Noah can do this. Yeah, you're gonna have to pay him, but he can do it. He can do it well, and I trust him.
Yeah.
You know. The other thing
Yeah,
is,
and the other thing is like you and I can work together on it, and whatever we got to do, it shouldn't be that much time in general, even if we're charging like full on retail as far as hourly cost. But I mean, the real takeaway is like Matt and Noah won't do things in your account to cost 30% of your profit margin, because 30% of your ad spend budget goes to waste because that's what Google wants.
Mhm.
That's the real big one. It's like, yeah, our interests aren't with Google, it's with you, the client.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
huge
the
part.
other Yeah, well, the other thing he talked about was lift measurement. It says Kyle to allow list for search and brand lift studies to understand the impact of running YouTube and demand gen. So I don't know what you know about that, but like there's certain available metrics that they'll launch
Yeah.
those surveys and stuff like that, and then you can have those metrics available. You can dial into the audiences that took the survey. Like, have you seen a ad in the last 30 days? And all the people that clicked yes, you can build an audience,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah,
I
or
think
maybe
that,
not, or who knows? I mean, either one of that's one of two things. Either that's the honey to add urgency to sign that plan, and or the other number two thing is like whatever that is. Maybe it's successful, maybe it's not, but at least it's something they can market as an offer to get you in on. Now, maybe it is. Maybe if they're genuine on their side, maybe it will add a 5% lift in return on ad spend or something of that nature, but maybe it won't. We don't know.
yeah,
And they're not transparent. They're not going to be transparent.
yeah,
So you can't bank on that. That's a you know, that's an undercover agreement to manipulate you into going along. That's what that is. Basically is, yeah, we're going to give you something that theoretically, potentially, maybe if the stars align, are going to provide you with a 10 to 15% uplift in whatever sales, return on ad spend, whatever, or decrease in cost per acquisition. And the uneducated client is going to see that and be like, oh man, this is Google directly giving me some of the sweet stuff. Oh yeah, well, okay, yeah, definitely, let's sign up. When in actuality, it may or may not. And you won't know until after the fact. But that's the other thing. So that's the manipulative practice in that contract and agreement, is Google is not specifically saying in there, we're going to give you this and it's going to yield this, or else we refund you.
yeah, yeah,
There's a big difference there. But the clients that aren't attuned to this stuff, yeah, they got a million other things to do with running the business. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's what a real professional would do. A real professional that cares about their clients, if they're going to make something performance oriented or something risky, they're going to say, hey, they're either going to underwrite the risk or say, hey, client, you're going to take on this risk, but here's the parameters where we cut it. Whatever the budget is. We're going to run $20,000. If it produces at this whatever, return on ad spend, cost per acquisition, then you're going to pay the full bill. If it doesn't, then we'll subsidize it, or we'll give you some type of promo or offset or something. Like, that's what a real professional that cares about the client would do if they wanted to engage in some kind of practice like that. And that's not what they're doing. So that tells you exactly what they're really doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you don't think I'm going to shake the hornet's nest too bad if I have just ghost them, cut it off, let keep communications with me.
No, here's what. Yeah, I mean, so I've had this situation in different, basically kind of like a similar setup in a different context with a client of mine's manufacturer of their product, like a multi-billion-dollar company, big brand in its vertical, etc. And they come in, they want to achieve all these things. The client's not qualified in the realm like the digital realms, things that you and I bring to the table. So it's really just saying, talk with the client first, explain it however you need to, and then communicate with the client. Obviously, you're running the business, you're doing all your things. You don't have the knowledge, expertise in the Google Ads realm. That's why you hired us. It would be it would be advantageous to you to keep your time focused on what you can control in the business. And then I work directly with this person, and I can do our absolute best to mitigate provenly bad strategies and implement strategies that we think will work, or create campaigns that are trial basis for a certain period of time that we can then evaluate and either keep or kill. That's the way I would explain it. And then basically the communication back to the Google team, the Google growth team, is going to be, hey, look, the business owner is too busy running the business, working on the logistics related to all those tasks. And the client would say this, I'm too busy to do all this. You're going to have to go through our consultant, Matt in this case, and he will work with you on what we can and can't implement this time around, and then put it back on. It's late in the game. Like, hey, our season has already started. We're past kickoff. We have strategies in place that are not only working, but have increased our year over year by 30%. And we can't mess that up, and we can't do trial and error right now. For next year, we'd be happy to plan and maybe re-engage with a strategy at that point in time. But right now, we're already in the middle of it. I'm too busy with everything I got to do. Work with Matt directly and just put it on that. Put it on late in the game. I'm too busy. Work with Matt, and that way it's not like a cold shoulder push off, but it's polite. Just do it in the most polite white collar fashion versus maybe how we would like to do it and tell them off. Just make it as nice and friendly as possible, and the main thing is make it as professional as possible, because let's just pretend let's pretend the owner hired this guy, Kyle. Oh, well, he's got all this stuff, blah, blah. You guys work together. You would have to just work it out. So, you just work it out in a professional manner, handle it politely, which I know you would anyway, but that's the way I would do it.
Okay, that's good. That's good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough, and I'll do that. Yeah, well, we'll talk about this at another time. I was going to tell you, there was even something he had brought up in the call that was just so almost, I don't know the word that I'm looking
egregious.
for. Well, he goes to the account level and he looks at the auction insights, and he shows how Amazon is, the at the top rank. You can see who has the most search impression share and all that.
Okay, yeah.
Auction insights.
Mm-hmm.
So Amazon's got the most, right? And then way down there, and he's using that as a reason for, obviously there's things we're not doing right, which is such a I mean,
it's manipulative practice. That's what I would say. I don't know if that's the legal terminology. It may not cross that barrier or threshold, but that's straight up manipulative practice. Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're at the account level. This is including display, video, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of areas where we purposefully don't have high.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. Yeah, you don't want that. Yeah. Yeah,
but then,
we can't issue stock like Amazon does to fund our marketing plans. No, yeah.
Well, and then I showed them like all the other. I said, look, and because part of those auction insights that people don't realize is your impression share is not necessarily you are not necessarily missing out on impressions you want. A lot of times you're missing out on impressions don't want to be a part of.
Yep.
And I even called him out. Like when he pulled it up, I said, look at those competitors. Number one, you got Terminex in there also. Now, Terminex is a highly toxic chemical product. We're not competing with Terminex.
Yeah.
Those are toxic pest control products. We are non-toxic. That was number one. They had True Green, which is a lawn growth company. You've heard of True Green, right?
Yeah. I get their door knockers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, so like Amazon, of course, we have a low impression share compared to all those companies because we are highly targeted and dialed in. And he said, well, this is only for relevant search phrase. I'm so glad this happened. He actually clicked on one of the search campaigns, the lawn kit search campaign that I set up, and he said, and this is just like the account overview. Like if I click here, and he clicked on the campaign, and I said, you're furthering my point.
Yeah.
I said, look, I said, number one, we had a higher search impression share. There we had 14%. But he was focused on Amazon being over. But its biggest competitor side had sub 10%. So like we're already overshooting their competitor by times and a half. And that I said, and by the way, I said, I'm glad you brought this campaign up because this is actually a campaign that I was incrementally trying to increase exposure, but they weren't getting a good ROAS. So I kept it where it was intentionally. I wasn't going to feed into all these other impressions and just increase costs, get more exposure, and have a lower ROAS. That doesn't make sense. So like I was like, and he got quiet. And I think like it was one of those moments though where like if I had not been on that call, that client would have just seen, oh my gosh, we're getting such low search impressions, such low exposure. Amazon's way outranking us. We've got to do something about that. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're exactly right, and that's thank God you were on the call because otherwise, then that's where these like the growth team guy, he comes in the middle of a perfectly functional relationship, you and your client. And then he comes in the middle and starts causing problems and giving imprecise, inaccurate communication to the client, which then creates a conflict with you because now, and of course the client's like, well, hey man, this guy's employed at Google. He must know everything. He must be up. He must know yada, yada, yada. Oh, and then he seems to somewhat know what we're doing and the products that we're selling and a little bit of the customers. So he must know. So now you create this drama triangle between you, the client, and this Google rep. And it just goes to show you, man, if you hadn't have been present, the Google representative would have derailed the client, made the client a victim, and cost them profits.
Yeah.
And or even revenue. I mean, one thing to cost a client some upside on some profits or something, and then it's another one to even just blow up the revenue too, which could have happened. So yeah, I mean, thank God you were on the call, and then again, it drives home the message, all the messages, all the things we talk about. Yeah.